Welcome to Beyond Sunday, the King of Kings podcast, where we dive a little bit deeper into our message series and see what we're taking beyond Sunday. My name is Dina Newsom, and I have some wonderful leader guests today, our two head honchos. Go ahead, introduce yourselves.
Hi, I'm Julie Easley, the Executive Director here at King of Kings.
I'm Greg Griffith.
So we are diving into the first week of Giving Challenge, the brand new Red Letter Challenge book that we are looking into that our own Pastor Zach Zender has written and is speaking on. And in light of this Giving Challenge, where we're talking about giving and we are talking about money, my opening question for you guys is, what's a childhood memory about money that you have? It can be good. It can be like a horrifying nightmare. What's a childhood memory of money that you can think of? Your childhood or maybe your kids, if you...
Okay, so this happened fairly recently. So my great-grandmother used to send my kids' birthday money in a card, and, you know, they would spend it. And I had saved all of those cards, and for some reason, I was just going through a bunch of boxes, and I opened up a card and found $20 that had been given to Tom when he turned 1. So I gave it to him 25 years later. And I said, spend it carefully. He said, I'm not spending this. I'm saving it. It's from my great grandma. So it's pretty cute and fun.
Yeah,
I had an Uncle Ralph, and every time he would come by, he would always just give every kid that was in the area of the family, he'd give them $1. And just say, here you go. This is ice cream money. Make sure you go get the ice cream. So I just always remember that. And that was fun. And it was always a fun shiny dollar, or fun crisp dollar bill. And so, yeah, it was cool.
When my oldest daughter was little, with the church that we went to at the time, my dad was an usher, and so they would pass the baskets, and she called him Papa. And so this one day, she would always have her little quarter she would get to put in the baskets, and she was so excited to put that quarter in the baskets. And then this day, Papa was passing the baskets, and she was just enamored with that. And the whole time in the service, like while they're walking around, she's like, "You got it, Papa. You got the basket. You got it, Papa. You got the money. Don't drop the money, Papa."
That's so sweet.
I got my money, Papa.
Oh, I love it.
That's
It's
cute.
the best thing.
Yeah. It was mortifying for me as a parent at the time, but I look back on it
very
now
sweet.
with much love.
Yeah, 100%. That's cute.
So Zach was really open about talking about this series may make us a little bit uncomfortable when we talk about giving. And that is something that maybe we are going to feel called out on. And I really liked, he kind of opened with talking about a science experiment that someone had done with these birds and the African grays versus the blue-headed macaws. How did that experiment speak to you, or what did it make you think of? For me, I really could relate to the blue-headed macaws, where I think I would, instinctively on my own, if I wasn't thinking of others, I'm just going to keep that little nut or little treat for myself.
Yes, I agree. I mean, I think about generosity is something that I need to. It's probably not always instinctual. Sometimes it is, but it's something I really need to think about. So I was impressed by those birds who probably don't have the thinking skills of a human, just being so willing to give, and like almost all of them did. But it's something. It's kind of an indictment.
Yeah, and for me, I mean, my lead spiritual gift is generosity.
Is it?
And so, honestly, generosity is not something I struggle with. At all, with my own or anything like that. I really, really don't think about it too much. So I found it interesting that, there are other birds in that. And I do think we see other spots in this. Canadian geese, if one is injured, one from the flock will always drop back and stay with it while it heals. And then when it recovers, then both will take back off and head back to where they were going, and then rejoin their group. And so, I think God always builds within creation, all of us, of this desire of togetherness in some way. And so So I don't know. I think the bird thing I found interesting. I'm not sure that I gave much more thought to it.
It's just because you're not a bird person. Too,
I don't
right?
like birds. I own two, but I don't like them. So.
Yeah. So one of the statements that Pastor Zach made was, at its core, generosity is discipleship. He said, it's impossible to be a stingy disciple. How did that strike you?
Yeah, I mean, it's true. I mean, I think right at the core of a disciple, it means that we are always pointing people and bringing people closer to Jesus and living like Jesus. And Jesus is reminding us that this whole world, he is the creator. God is the creator. We are the created. Everything belongs to him. Genesis 1 is, I mean, we're doing it now. We spent 3 weeks in just Genesis 1. And it's just a reminder of that God is setting us out as Yahweh Elohim, the Lord your God, who is sovereign over all things. And so for a disciple, we have to be a disciple who is following and being more like Jesus and generous, knowing that none of this is ours, whether it's money, whether it's our families, everything. It's all a gift and entrusted. So for sure, you can't, and this is even our faith. If it's like, well, this is my faith, but I don't share it because I'm afraid of what's going to happen. It's really hard to say you're a disciple. It really is. It doesn't mean you have to shout from the rooftops, but man, we do have to live and share our faith.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, along those lines, I think what Zach had described a disciple as is someone who's being like and doing like their leader. Well, Jesus was just the ultimate giver of his life, but also on earth of his time. And right, he wasn't hoarding money for himself. He wasn't saying, here's all this private time that I need. He was just always giving. And then ultimately we see that on the cross. So Jesus is a generous giver, the ultimate in generous givers. And so if we want to be and do like him, we need to do the same.
That's really good. Being generous is not always one of the first things I think of when I think of being a disciple. I think of being kind and caring and empathetic and joyful and those type of things. But this was a good reminder for me of, how valuable and how important that is.
Mm-hmm.
And like you said, that it was all that Jesus was, all generosity. So,
well, and it was the early church, right? So, I mean, this is Acts, right? That they came and gave everything so that no one had any need amongst them. And so, right, when we're talking about, the Acts church is not the church then, it's the church now. And so, right, how are we living that out? For sure.
So one of the verses that Pastor Zach mentioned was Matthew 6:21. For where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. How do you reflect this in your own life, or how do you see this in your daily life?
Yeah, for me, it's not as much about giving or money. For me personally, it's self. So my treasure is I love myself. I can be tremendously selfish, and so. So for me, I'm always fighting against that of my treasure needs to be to love my neighbors as I love myself. A lot of times when I am out of my spiritual rhythms and routines and I'm out of a rhythm of living for Jesus and being like my leader and following my leader, it will be love myself, not love my neighbors as myself. So that it is very true. I think your treasure is where your heart will be. It's what is your treasure?
Yeah, if I think about it in regards to money, I think about tithes and offerings and wanting to be faithful in giving a tithe to the church and then giving over and above. And when I do that, you feel more naturally invested in what's happening. You want to see money used well. You want to see it being used for the biggest impact. And for me and my job here at the church, it's trying to ensure that we're doing those kinds of things. And then, other places where we're giving, like we sponsor a child who's in Guatemala, and I'm interested in what's going on there and what's going on in his life. I mean, all of those things speak to, I've put some of my treasure there, and I really care.
Yeah, at my last job, I and a coworker of mine would do some consulting for churches, where we would look at ways to improve, maybe like a side business for them to improve their income that they would have in their church. And one of the first things that my coworker would say is, "Let me see your budget because that's going to tell me where your values are. What you're putting the most money into." And that doesn't equate dollar for dollar,
Sure.
because you have building upkeep and you have staffing that you have to pay for that are often large expenditures. But when he was looking at ministry breakdowns, they would say, "Oh, we really value kids ministry," but they would have a very, very small budget for it and very large budgets for maybe other ministries. And he would say, "This is not telling me the same thing that you're telling me." And he would reflect on this verse, that this is what God has given you this money to utilize as a church to share him with your community. And how are you best using your resources in it? And really would dive into this verse and looking at that through those eyes. And so that's what I kept thinking of when Zach was talking about that. I don't know how it really reflects for me in my daily life. I try to be I'm very logistical. So like I've got my X dollars that's what goes here, and that, my X time that's what goes here. Like I'm just kind of parceled it all out that way. And I know some people are very emotional about their giving, or like he was talking about, you give when you feel stirred or stuff. And that was not me. I'm very like, okay, it says 10%. I'm going to strive for my 10%. And sometimes I can make it and sometimes I can't make it, depending what job I have or what my life style is. But I really like just that he focused so much on that and really brought it back to, I think this is a verse that we overlook sometimes.
I had a predecessor who, it wasn't for a healthy reason in any stretch of the imagination, but it's pretty cool. And then it led me to kind of a different thought, which was he would give every week, and he would increase his giving each week by 1 penny. And the reason he did that is he didn't trust actually that they were always tracking and giving him credit for his giving. So he knew then that at the end of the year, if it was it would go 1 through 52. But what ended up happening was he would just continue to roll that over. And over time, he ended up, I think somewhere, I think he was probably making, this was in the early 2000s, probably making about $70,000 a year, and giving about $18,000 a year. And again, by a 1 penny increment, it was net. And again, all 4 of his kids went to private school. He paid for their colleges. He had cars. He had, but he just had learned to live on what he had, but always was giving. And this is the Malachi 3 principle. And then for me, one of the things I always strive to think about, and we're really close. I'm like probably within a few years of being able to do this, of that, what it will be like when the largest check or the largest amount given each month will be to my church. And I can't wait for that day. Like that will be such a celebratory day to me to say, like, truly the most I'm giving is giving to a church I love. And what I love about God's biblical value of tithing and generosity and of giving is it really is a loss of control. We don't have the ability when we give to a church to go, you have to use the money this way. Or, I mean, what we're really saying is we're saying you're carrying this out in the kingdom of God. And I trust God, not necessarily even I trust you. I trust God to be good. Now, those who work in churches and those who are nonprofits have a responsibility, right? And so great for them is the accountability to the Lord on that. And so I love it. I love the whole process.
I remember the day when my dad came and told us, and I was probably a teenager at the time, where he said, you know what, this year I'm actually going to give 10% of my income to our church. Like, and he was so proud. And I'm sure in my teenage snottiness, I was like, oh, big deal. Can I buy this now? But I think of that often, like that was a moment he wanted to come and share with us, that was a milestone for him.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool that he shared that. I think as parents who are raising disciples, we have to be open with our children about our faith journey, including our finances. Finances, I don't think, are private. I think when we're talking about giving, I think it's something that we don't brag about, but it is something that we do share, and we say, you know what, as a tither, here's the blessings I received. And it's not always financial, but it certainly is spiritual and emotional.
Mm.
Where do you think the shame comes from in talking about money? Or I don't know if it would be shame or, where people are embarrassed to talk about their giving or to talk about specific dollar amounts. What do you think? I mean, I know it comes from Satan, but how do we think this grew so much? Because I feel like it's different now than it was 20 years ago or 20 years before that.
Mm.
Yeah. I think, well, one, I think we live in such a comparison society. And I think that's just been exasperated over the last 20 years. And I will say this, comparison is from Satan. The moment I compare myself to someone else, that is not by God. I'm never called to compare, because first of all, God has gifted me in ways that are perfect for his kingdom and for me to live it out. And my gifts are going to be different than other people's gifts. And other people are going to have greater gifts. And other people are going to have greater responsibilities than I do. And if I want to look and say, I need to have, I don't think equality is biblical, right? In this respect, like God gives to everyone where they're called and gifted and suited to do the best for his kingdom. My pinky does not have the same responsibility as my heart. Mm-hmm. Equally valuable, but different roles and responsibilities. And I love both greatly. I would not want to give up my heart. I would not want to give up my pinky. Right. But so I think some of that is all from Satan. And so the comparison thing is there, and it's real. I also hate when people say it's not equal gifts, it's equal sacrifice, because that's not true either, right? The sacrifice of Dhaka in Uganda that gave us a chicken was way more than a sacrifice that I make when I say, I'm going to be a part of Let's Go, and we're not going to do a bunch of vacations this year. Like, that's a sacrifice selfishly on my side. But in no way did I say, my kids are not going to have 2 eggs for the next couple of days or until we replace that chicken. And we're going to have to figure out how to find the eggs. But I love these people who came to my house, so I'm going to give them a live chicken. Like, so the sacrifice of the widow's mite versus the rich person who says, yeah, this year I'm going to give this amount, but it doesn't. I actually just heard a story about this. A guy said his, a guy gave a very large gift to their church and he said, thank you, thank you, thank you. And finally the guy said, please stop saying thank you. And he goes, why? And he goes, because it really wasn't that much of a sacrifice for me. And he goes, well, then you need to pray about what you need to give so that my thank you actually matters. And I thought, wow, that's true.
Yeah. That's convicting.
So, what an awareness, right?
Yeah. Yes. I don't know if we necessarily always feel ashamed about money, but I do think that it's something that people can be pretty private about because it is such a discipleship measure for the believer. And if you feel like I'm not doing this, you probably don't want to talk about it very much. I was listening to a podcast where someone said, when you're putting your hand towards a hot stove, you feel the heat and you want to pull your hand away. And sometimes if we're not giving sacrificially, our instinct is not to get closer to that fire of conviction. It's to move away. And I think money is something that can really be a snare and an entrapment. And I'm not pointing the finger at anybody else. I'm talking to myself as well.
Yeah. So another thing that Zach talked about was he asked a question. What if the key to gaining a godlike heart is being generous first? How do you hope people respond to that question?
I think just trusting in the goodness of God and that the things that he asks of us are not for our detriment, but only for our benefit and for our flourishing. So when he commands us to be a generous people and to give, he's doing that because he knows what's best for our hearts and how we'll best flourish in life. So he's not saying, hey, I want you to sacrifice so that you're miserable. He's saying, I want you to sacrifice so that you can know the joy that I experienced when I sacrificed everything for you.
Yeah, don't hear me when I say this. I do believe this is a giving series, and the book is about giving. So one thing though is generosity is not just about finances. Tim Keller said that as Americans, we actually may even be more of a generous nation than we'd like to give credit for, right? So this is, especially millennials are getting this. This is why at the grocery stores, at your banks, right? Do you want to round up, right? And so generosity is financially is flourishing, right? Tithing's different, and so that's generosity and tithing are not synonyms, but generosity also is more than finances. And an area that I find where, for me, that I'm really working on, as Tim Keller was talking about, is he said, I think, and he was talking about New Yorkers, and I identified with this, not because I'm a New Yorker, but he said, here in New York, we need to be generous with our time. Our time is actually our most valuable commodity. And so we say, how are you doing? But we don't really want to know. We walk past you and say hello, but please don't stop me and say, hey, I would love to tell you something about my heart. And I find myself in a phone call or in a conversation or with things, and my time is where I need to start responding generously greater first. And so I hope people would say, where is God challenging them in generosity outside of financial as well? But where in generosity is God challenging them to be generous with whatever their most valuable commodity is? And for me right now, my most valuable commodity is time. Not because I'm busy, but because I try to maximize as much as I can throughout a day with everything that I'm doing. And so sometimes I can find myself saying, ooh, that doesn't fit into my schedule of the day. And yet, if I give that generously first, I find my day's actually been better than I would have ever planned.
And usually there's room for it then?
There always is room. There
Yeah.
always is room. I was just talking to someone about this, right? Like, I don't know, it's a little tight. Maybe I'm in a soapbox. Maybe you guys can edit this out if you want. But, we talk work-life balance, and I was like, what does that mean, right? And then I actually did the math. Am I right, Julie? You would probably know. Are there 122 hours in a week? Is that right? 7
I'm
days?
so bad at math. I am the wrong
Someone's
person to
gonna
ask.
do that. But if I recall, I believe I saw somewhere that there's like 122 hours.
168 total hours, like
100
24 times
Okay,
7.
great. 168. Even better for me. So I want to
Just
work
gain
life
2 days.
balance. Well, think about this for a minute.
Maybe it's 122 taking out sleeping.
Okay, maybe.
Mhm.
But either way, like at 168 hours. So if my work week is 40 hours a week, I've got 4 times that. Right? Like 4 times that I'm not working. Like, so I'm starting to struggle in my head of going, like,
What am I
this?
doing?
Is my work-life balance wrong? Like, because it looks like the life balance is actually out of balance. Right? And so, yes, there is always time.
Yeah.
I mean, at the end of the day, like, there is always time. And so I was like, when I go, I didn't have time this week to work out, there were 122 extra hours. What did I do? Like, what do you mean I didn't have time?
Yeah.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
That's where the phone can be such a trap. I mean,
Oh,
I think
it's
about
so bad.
how productive people were 100 years ago because they didn't have the phone.
Facebook off my phone. I just was like, this isn't healthy for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An hour goes by and I watch 3 cat videos and a Jimmy Fallon joke or something.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. Was it Michael Scott who said he saw YouTube and spent 5 days watching cat videos? Yeah.
Yeah. YouTube.
Cat videos are amazing.
That's not my spiritual weakness, but
Maybe I need to check out some bird videos.
yeah, there you go.
Okay, so this is week 1 of 6 that we're going to be diving into this, and our Connect groups are looking at it. People are hopefully going through it in their homes. What do you really want people to take from this series? And what's your final takeaways from this first message? Or as we kick off, what are you hoping for our members to really just dive in and know more about this?
Mm-hmm. I think just that people would take their treasure, whatever it is, treasure of time, treasure of money, treasure of gifts that God's given to you, talents and abilities, and putting them in the places where God's heart is, so our hearts can look more like His.
Yeah, I would invite and encourage everyone to listen to the prompts that the Lord is giving to you. And I think that in this, God will speak to you over the next 40 days how to be generous that will make a life greater in there. I was convicted recently when someone was telling me how he tries to live each day with grace for every person. And he was having a bad day and things weren't going well. And the guy at the grocery store wasn't being kind to him. And he was so mad, he was going to go tell a manager. And right before he got to the manager, he just heard a prompt from God who said, "Go back." And he went back to the man and he said, "Sir," and the guy looks at him and goes, "What do you want now?"
Oh.
And he goes, "I need to tell you I'm sorry. I came in with a bad attitude and I put that on you." And he said the guy balled his fists up and he covered his face and he brought his fist down and he said, "I'm really new at this. I forgive you."
Wow.
And he listened to the prompt of God to be generous with the grace from God. And that allowed someone to be able to start to use the grace of God in his life. And so I really want to see people, I want to see me like listening to the voice of God and then actually doing it, not ignoring it, and not being selfish, but being generous to what God's calling me to do.
Yeah, I really liked what Zach talked about, what the world says versus what Jesus said. And I wrote them down and I'm going to read them. So give me a second. But I just listening to that prompting, here it is. Like, this is literally what the scripture says. And the world says, protect what's yours and spend it while you have it. Give only if there's something in it for you and that money is your security, equals security. But Jesus says it is more blessed to give than to receive. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions. To whom much is given, much will be required. You cannot serve both God and money. And what good is it for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul? I really liked those. And I thought, okay, that's what I'm going to, I wrote them down so I can keep it on my desk as we go through this series and really find, okay, how am I listening to those? How am I working out those in my own life? What am I focusing on that Jesus says that is not what the world says? Because it's so easy just to listen to the world.
Yeah, good.
Any other final takeaways as we wrap up? Looking forward to the rest of this series, and we'll hear more about the Giving Challenge. Until then, let's keep living our faith beyond Sunday.